It's the playoffs on Why Eagles Why channel. Hi, everybody. Dave Bontempo, Bill Gelman, and Pete Amato with you. We do our show in 4 quarters plus overtime. Please remember to hit like and subscribe to be notified about future videos. We come into this first playoff week after a barn burner weekend for the ages. 2 number 1 seeds get knocked off, Tennessee and Green Bay. So here's what we're left with. Cincinnati plays at Kansas City for the AFC Championship, and it's the Niners and Rams teeing it up again in Los Angeles for the NFC Championship. Guys, the books came out and made the Niners 3.5-point underdogs and the Bengals 7-point underdogs. And for the most part, Bill, those lines have stayed a couple of days later.
Yeah, and it doesn't surprise me. We were talking before we started recording here that the Niners have a hot streak going against the Rams. They've won 6 in a row against them, including 2 games this regular season. And on the other side, Cincinnati has a win over Kansas City. And Cincinnati, I see them as the darling of this NFL season. You're talking about a team that really hasn't been in the playoff conversation. And Pete, were you even born the last time Cincinnati was in the playoffs?
What was the last time? I was born in 85. Hey, 85, I was born.
They were in the Super Bowl a little bit later than that, but they're never in the conversation about the playoffs. And last year, they were 4-11-1. Oh, no, they won 4 games. They were where the Eagles were. Now, the Eagles, they did make the playoffs, but the Bengals, Pete, a team you jumped on all year, as did I, the Bengals now have gotten all the way to the championship game. And what do you think of that team when you look at them?
Yeah, I've had confidence in that team since week 1. And it kind of goes back to last season. Joe Burrow was probably the one quarterback I was most impressed with last season before he got hurt. He wasn't like a huge name coming out of college, but he was supposed to be good. And when he got hurt, it was like a mid-season. So people kind of forgot about him this year. And then they go out and get a monster wide receiver. So Joe Burrow was already playing good, and now they get a number 1 wide receiver for him and another person to throw to. So I was high on him. I thought he was going to have a good season. And fortunately for me, he has. He's been great. He's been a great leader for the team. And he's just kind of just consistent every week. Him and Chase, who consistently keeps getting better. if that's hard enough. The guy was already good in the beginning of the year, and then all of a sudden he's just breaking records at the end of the year just because. So I'm impressed with that team. I've been impressed with that team all season and last season. So it's going to be a tough test for them. Kansas City is the real deal, and you're playing in Kansas City. So Cincinnati has already beat them once, and the playoffs are a different story though.
We're going to look at that game in the second quarter, but I want to throw back to something here in this quarter, in that when the Bengals beat Tennessee 19-16 and they advanced into this game, Joe Burrow eclipsed a mark set by Donovan McNabb. He was sacked 9 times in a winning playoff effort. And Eagles fans may remember that McNabb had the record, dubious as it was, 8 sacks against the Green Bay Packers in a game that he came back and the Eagles beat the Packers. And when you guys hear that, McNabb getting sacked 8 times and somehow coming up with a way to win, what do you think when you look back on a stat and a memory like that?
Wait a minute. Are you talking about the game where it was Freddie Mitchell and fourth?
I think that was the 4th and 26.
4th and 26.
That's what I remember about that game. I don't
Mitchell,
remember.
People's champ.
Yeah, I don't remember McNabb getting sacked that many times, but it was. That's the 4th and 26 is what I remember about that game. I didn't even.
That's right.
Yeah.
I don't even remember the rest of the game. So that's a neat little stat there that the Eagles actually had that record.
Yeah.
They're probably happy to lose that record, maybe that they got sacked for the 8 times, but it shows you what a team can do to overcome those sacks, but how disruptive it is. Joe Burrow with all those weapons. Well, we're going to take a look at the games, starting with the Bengals and the Chiefs in the second quarter. Second quarter, why Eagles, why playoff edition. The Cincinnati Bengals will visit the Kansas City Chiefs. They did something few people thought they could do last week in beating the Tennessee Titans 19-16, in that they had 3 takeaways. Now, Pete, they got an interception on Ryan Tannehill on his first pass, led to 3 points. And they got an interception on his last pass with 20 seconds to go. And that set up the winning drive. When you look at the Bengals, everything is their offense, but this is one time their defense came up big in a big game.
Yeah, and all season, the Bengals offense has been carrying this team. But that shows you kind of the characteristics of a complete team, a good team. When the offense comes up short, the defense kind of makes up for it. In 2017 with the Eagles, that's how it was all season. Mostly all season, it was Carson Wentz dominating, and then toward big moments and big games, the defense stepped up. So, I mean, that gives you a little more confidence in the team that this defense can step up in big situations when you put them on big spots. So I think it makes the Bengals kind of look like more of a complete team and not just some kind of one-hit wonder.
All right, Bill, the Kansas City Chiefs played the Bengals earlier in the year, 34-31 victory for the Bengals, and some ridiculous stats in that game with the Joe Burrow, 4 touchdowns, nearly 500 yards, and he had a touchdown called back, which would have put him over 500. Jamar Chase went off the charts. So when you look at that first game with the Chiefs and the Bengals, what comes to mind for you about these teams?
I think what comes to mind for me is, one, the Bengals have developed into a talented young team quicker than I thought they would. I thought the Bengals were probably another year away before we even talked about them being a AFC championship contender. And, they knocked out Tennessee in a thrilling finish on Sunday. But, I mean, Burrow and Chase, they really didn't run the ball in that first meeting against the Chiefs because they got behind. So they had 60 yards rushing the entire game. That's not just Joe Mixon, that's the entire rushing attack. But Burrow, I mean, like you said, he had 4 touchdowns. Jamar Chase, who's an absolute stud in terms of wide receivers, 260 yards and 3 touchdowns in a game for a rookie. I mean, that's like the old LSU chemistry coming back together in Cincinnati. I mean, they took their from the college game to the pro game, and I mean they're clicking right from the start, and it's made a huge difference for Cincinnati. Teams are putting points up against this Kansas City defense in the playoffs and during the regular season. So the talent's there. It's just a matter of whether or not they can match the firepower of Kansas City, because Kansas City, as we all saw on Sunday, can score a lot of points and with very little time on the clock.
That is an epic game. Probably one of the handful of greatest finishes in NFL history, and that we had 25 points scored in the last 2 minutes, 31 points in about a quarter, including the 6-point overtime, 344 yards of offense in less than a quarter. And the Chiefs had the ball with 13 seconds to go on their final possession on their own 25. And they brought the ball down the field to set up a field goal as time wound down. Some of the most incredible things that happened in a game. Pete, now, as you look back on that, first of all, your thoughts on that game, and then, did they leave it on the field? Is that their Super Bowl, or does that propel them in the following week?
I think it definitely propels them as far as their offense. It gives their offense so much confidence, and maybe that leaks over to the defense. If the defensive players are thinking, if we just hold them to this other team to like hold the Bengals to maybe 2-3 punts a game, like let's just try to get as much out of it as we can. Our offense can go down the field in less than 30 seconds, in less than a minute. I think it gives confidence to the team all around. Because if you're seeing that the offense is clicking the way it did in that game was absolutely insane. I think as a defensive player, I'm saying, well, it's time for us to step up. I mean, we almost lost this game for them several times just because we couldn't slow down the game. We couldn't stop them at Buffalo at all. So I think it maybe adds a little more pressure to the defense, but I think it does add some confidence because now they know what the other side is capable of. And I think it definitely helps.
Famous NFL games, the Ice Bowl, the Eagles in the Fog Bowl. Maybe they'll call that one the Whoa Bowl because that was an incredible finish. And that is one of the games up, the Chiefs and the Bengals. We'll look at the other one in the third quarter. Third quarter of Why, Eagles Why, playoff preview, Niners and Rams. They're at the Rams again. Big deal for the 49ers. They've beaten the Rams 6 straight times, and they come in as an underdog. But for them, so what? We talked about the game between the Chiefs and the Bills, 25 points in the last 2 minutes. Bill, that was more than the entire game between the Niners and Packers. Are you sold on the Niners?
I sold to the fact that I think they belong in this conversation now, because in the last 7 games, they're one of the hottest teams in the NFL. They've won 6 out of the last 7, I believe. The only loss was a 2017 to the Tennessee Titans in December. So you're talking, they beat the Bengals, who are in the AFC Championship game. They beat the Titans, who are almost beat the Titans, who are the number 1 seed in the AFC. They have 2 wins over the Rams. I mean, they're not beating cupcake teams like our beloved Philadelphia Eagles have all season. These are teams, and they're hot at the right time. And I got home in time Saturday night to see the last 5 minutes of that game. So I saw the block punt. I saw the 49ers take the lead. I never in my lifetime, with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, thought I'd see a NFC divisional playoff game at Lambeau Field where Rodgers and the Packers would score 10 points in a game. In a game, not a quarter, a game.
Well, that was quite a defensive performance for the Niners in that game, in that their offense got 2 field goals and they won because of the special teams touchdown and denying Green Bay on a field goal late in the half. Now, Pete, this Niners team has only given up 34 points in the last 10 quarters. And so they're winning some of these mid to low range scoring games. What do you make of this defensive effort by the 49ers?
Yeah, for me, the Niners have surprised me all season. They were a mess in the beginning of the season. They didn't know who their quarterback was going to be. They had injuries. Like they weren't the same team. But you have to give the Niners credit, their defensive players, their defensive coordinator, because they have been carrying this team, and they carried them all the way to the conference championship. So, and it's not like we haven't seen it before. We saw it a few years back when they were a wild card team, and then we're seeing it again. They have a really good defense, and we have seen defensive teams carry their team to the Super Bowl in the past. We saw it with the Ravens. We saw it with the Giants when they had that insane defensive line. So we have seen defense win Super Bowls. They say defense wins games, but it's been a little different in the last few years with the NFL because it's usually the offense and the quarterback. But yeah, they've surprised me all year. I thought they were a mess in the beginning of the year. I thought this was going to be more of a rebuilding year, figure out who's going to be their quarterback. But they've surprised me, and they probably surprised a lot of other people.
Kind of brings back some memories for Eagles fans, how the Raiders did that in 1980, winning the game, the wild card all the way up. They won 3 games and then beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl. Now, Bill, last year we saw Tampa Bay have a home game in the Super Bowl. Things do run in streaks. And is that something we're looking at again?
Very possibly. I mean, the Rams they have the home field on Sunday, Sci-Fi Stadium. It also happens to be the site of Super Bowl 56. The question is, do the Rams have what it takes to finally knock off the 49ers? 49ers, I actually fear the 49ers right now because they are one of the hottest teams in the league. They got hot at the right time. And like I touched on a few minutes ago, they beat some really good teams. But I'm not sold on the Rams. So it's like they had a big lead on Sunday against Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, the defending Super Bowl champions, and they almost blew it late in the game.
It's Tom Brady.
It is Tom Brady, and Tom Brady always seems to step up at the
yeah.
right time. But it's the Rams have seemed to turn it on and turn it off at times, and so it'll be interesting to see if because they definitely showed me something on Sunday that they move the ball. They have one of the best wide receiver in the NFL right now in Cooper Kupp, in my mind. Deebo Samuel's up there too from the 49ers. So I would put them towards the top of the list. Jamar Chase, who we already touched on, is up there. So there's you got some real talent. I think it's going to be an exciting game, but I could see this game going either way. And it'd be really neat to see if the Rams actually win on Sunday, and so they get to play essentially home field, almost throughout the playoffs, minus the trip to Tampa Bay.
That's true.
Will it be Sci-Fi at SoFi?
Mm-hmm.
We'll take a look at the Rams in the fourth quarter. Fourth quarter of Why Eagles Why, the playoff edition, now looking at the Los Angeles Rams as they take on the San Francisco 49ers again. 6 straight losses to the Niners, and now they're hosting them. But despite all of that, now, Pete, they go in and they knocked off the Tampa Bay Bucks on the road. Give them credit for that. As you look at the Los Angeles Rams, what comes to mind for you about this team this year?
Comes to mind me is giving Stafford a winning team. I mean, Stafford has always been one of the better quarterbacks in the league. Even when he was on Detroit, he did have Megatron a lot of the years, but Detroit was never a complete team. They were always a bad team, but Stafford always had good numbers. And now they kind of put him in there with more than one target to throw to. Obviously you have Cooper Kupp, who's probably the best receiver in the league now. You put a totally refreshed Odell Beckham in there, and you got Higbee, Jefferson. They have a lot of people he can throw to, a lot of targets. So I think it comes down to him. I mean, he has 41 touchdowns this year. I think about 5,000 passing yards. I think he's just showing that he has been a great quarterback all these years, and he just was never on a great team. So I think it's going to come down to him. If he can, the one thing he is known for is throwing interceptions. He's a gunslinger, kind of like Brett Favre. He's going to throw interceptions, but he's going to throw a lot of touchdowns. So if he can kind of keep the turnovers down this game, I think the Rams beat the Niners. I think they are able to score on the Niners. Niners have a great offense, great defense, but the Rams have they have so many good offensive players that they can go to, and I think that's what's going to put them over the top in this game.
Bill, you wonder if Jared Goff is saying, why me? As Stafford and Goff were traded for each other. Goff goes to Detroit, and you saw what happened with the Lions. And now here is Matthew Stafford going to the Rams, and a dream come true for him as they're playing a home game to try and win the NFC Championship.
Hey, that's what we call a Hollywood story.
What do you make of what Stafford has done this year?
I mean, if he got put in the right situation, he was going to put up crazy numbers. I mean, he has almost 5,000 passing yards on the season. He has 41 touchdowns. And like Pete said, he is interception prone. He has 17 of them this season, but he has talent around him. And that makes a difference. When you have a guy like Cooper Kupp, who we touched on a couple of times. He has running backs. He has a solid tight end. And yes, Odell Beckham Jr., who was some people might say was a cancer in
He's a
Cleveland.
new man.
Destroying the locker room, and then he comes to LA, he gets a restart, and he's not the star wide receiver. He's like the second or sometimes third option on the field. So to have someone like Odell Beckham Jr. as a number 2 wide receiver, that's something Philadelphia Eagles front office would dream about. You listen to me, Howie? Anyway, I digress.
Howie does watch this program, by the way. I confirm. It was confirmed a couple weeks ago.
That's good to know.
Hey, you
Maybe
got
he'll
a
listen to
second.
us, Pete.
You've got a second. You've got a second guy with OBJ, and that takes a lot of heat off of Cooper Kupp, and leaves him some space.
Yes, it does. And I think the key here, the Rams offense has to get going, and they have to get going early, because the 49ers showed us last weekend that they can come back late in the game with a special teams play, because their offense didn't look great on Sunday. It was, the special teams came to the rescue, and because it's of the 4 quarterbacks that are playing in the playoffs right now, Jimmy G, would you guys put him on that list with these other 3 quarterbacks as far as elite quarterbacks in the NFL?
I would not.
No.
He runs a ball control type of an offense, and he's not a guy that you would expect to make plays. If he does, I guess you would look for him to go to George Kittle. Now, you talk about the irony, Bill, of the Rams trying to win at home and then play a Super Bowl there. How about this irony on the other side if they don't win? They had the 49ers on the ropes in the last regular season game. They're up 17-0 at home. If they win the game, the Niners are not even in the playoffs. So they couldn't knock them out of the playoffs. And now if they lose, the Niners got into the playoffs against them and will get into the Super Bowl against them. So that's just an incredible way that things fit in this particular matchup.
Yeah, that hopefully, I mean, as a coach or a player, you don't think about that kind of stuff, but they probably are. And if they do lose, that's going to dig at them for a long time. If we could have just put them away, we had a chance to put them away, they wouldn't even be here. But honestly, I think the Rams do win this game. I just think the Niners had a good run. They have a good defense, but I just think the Rams have just too many weapons. And the Niners aren't going to be able to keep up with them score for score. They might come up big with some defensive plays, but I just can't see them holding back that offense for a full 4 quarters.
All right, going to be very, very interesting. 2 rematches in the championship games as the Rams now try to get over the hump against the Niners. That was one of our FanDuel promos during the year. Bill, you and I worked on that a lot. Bet 5 to get 30-1 odds. And the one we worked on in the midseason when they met for the first time, a lot of people jumped on the Rams for that promo thinking, hey, they're heavily favored at home. I'm going to get myself to 150, and they didn't get it that week.
And FanDuel said thank you.
Yeah, they said FanDuel said thank you. We'll take a look at some parting thoughts in overtime. It's overtime on Why Eagles Why. Dave Bontempo, Bill Gelman, and Pete Amato with you. As you have followed us all year, you know that we talk about the Eagles entirely in this show. Well, they're out of the playoffs now, but we're doing the playoff edition. Yet still, there is a tone of what about the Eagles? What do we learn from this about this team? So we'll get Bill and Pete to weigh in on the parting shots about where this all leaves the Eagles. And Bill, we start with some news about a former Eagles coach.
Yeah, Sean Payton, who actually was a former quarterbacks coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. He is retiring as head coach of the Saints after 15 seasons down there. He does have a Super Bowl ring. Since Drew Brees retired, and the team has been sort of in a almost a rebuild mode. They were in the playoff conversation all the way up to the regular season, but the Saints really weren't a playoff team. And I guess, he'll probably end up in a television booth somewhere on the NFL Network. I don't know where he's going to end up. It's just a new little news flash that came across my phone as we were recording the last quarter. So it'll be interesting to see if some guy named Jonathan Gannon ends up on that list too, because I know he's drawn interest, and I don't think Pete. I know Pete and I wouldn't be upset if Jonathan Gannon ends up being a head coach somewhere else. I'm sure you might be on that list too, Dave. But the one thing these playoffs have taught me in terms of the Eagles are another probably 2 years away before they're even a serious playoff conversation. Yes, they made the playoffs, but you look at the teams that are left and they got knocked out. They lost to Tampa Bay, who almost won in the divisional round. They lost to Kansas City. They did not play Cincinnati. They lost to the 49ers. So those teams have really stepped up, and they played well against tough competition. Whenever the Eagles had the tough competition, they forgot to show up for either half the game, and they just don't have the talent. I think they have so many holes in that roster still to fill. I'm just I don't see the Eagles being in the Super Bowl conversation or the NFC Championship conversation next year. I hope maybe they surprise me. Maybe they make some amazing moves, have a great draft, signs a couple of big name free agents. But I think this time next year we'll all still be talking about how the Eagles are another year away.
Well, on your Sean Payton news with their Super Bowl winning season, how about starting the second half with an onside kickoff and recovering? What a gutsy, one of the few early innovators of going for things on fourth down and 2-point conversions. And by the way, we talked about the Niners playing the Rams. It was Sean Payton's Saints who would have gotten into the Super Bowl had the Rams defeated the Niners. Now, Pete, when you look at the playoffs and where the Eagles are, what did this reveal to you?
Going back to the onside kick, who dropped that ball that on the Colts? That was former Eagles wide receiver Hank Baskett. He's the one that flubbed that ball.
All right.
I think I hear that name ever again.
I remember that because I was laughing I just was like, you gotta be, yeah. I don't think he ever touched the field again after that. But anyway, yeah. So I agree with Bill, man. It just shows you like how these teams are. Besides the Niners not really having like an offensive side, like the other teams are just like complete teams. They have superstars, at least one superstar on each side of the ball, offense, defense. We just don't have that. We don't even really have. We have our offensive line, I think, is set for a while, which is good, depending on what Kelsey does here. But I just feel like we're a long ways away. We got to figure out the quarterback situation. If Jalen Hurts can start improving on his reads, we got to figure out the defense situation. I think all the linebackers are probably not good enough to play on other teams. I just feel like they're so far away right now, especially when you look at, can their defense actually stop any of these offenses when they're running? And even when we played those teams, the offenses really didn't look that great. There was injuries throughout the season, but like at full capacity with these offenses in a playoff atmosphere, you see what they really can do. And our defense wouldn't stand a chance. And I think, the first thing is getting rid of Jonathan Gannon and getting a whole different defensive outlook in there, because I feel like this passive defensive thing isn't good to win. And as a Philly team, we can say, the fans shouldn't you shouldn't listen to the fans, but Philly's always been an aggressive defensive team. And I just think it just doesn't work here. I don't get the whole love for Gannon, but hey, see you later. Congratulations. Hopefully if he gets a head coaching job.
I'm going to flip this back for a comment for both of you. Let's just say at the end of last year, when the Eagles were 4-11-1, and let's say that was 0. And let's say playing for the Super Bowl is 100. How far did this team travel between 0 and 100 this year? Exactly how much progress were the Eagles able to make? It's obviously a perception and an opinion, but Bill, I'll throw to you first with that. 0 last year, 100 if you're playing in a Super Bowl. How far did the Eagles travel this year?
I'm actually having trouble coming up with a number because in some ways, you put them around 60, 70 because they did make the playoffs. But then you think about it, they only made the playoffs because they played the Giants twice. They played Washington twice. They beat the Jets. They beat Detroit. You take all those games off, I don't even know if, I think they'd be closer to 30, 40. They showed like Devontae Smith, he's someone they can build around. Then the running game is something they can build around, but and the offensive line, the core seems to be there. Everywhere else, in my mind, I have questions. So I would say if I look at the total body of work here, I would say, less than halfway.
All right. I might put them at 52 and 1/8, just to be exactly sure. How about you, Pete? Where would you put them in that cycle of how far they came?
Yeah, there's so many questions. I mean, I don't even think they were that bad as 4-11 when they went 4-11. Or were they that bad and then they're just as bad now? I think there's too many questions, especially, and a lot of the questions didn't get answered. In my opinion, the Jalen Hurts question didn't really get answered. I mean, he was too up and down to really say, is he going to be the guy? And no matter what the front office says, I still think in the back of their mind, if a Rodgers or a Russell Wilson becomes available, they're going to see what's going on with that. They cannot convince me that they know 100% that Jalen Hurts is going to be the starter next year. And then on the defense, you still have the same questions. We still don't have linebackers. Our secondary, besides Slay and McLeod, it's like a revolving door. So I would say like 30, 26.8. I don't know.
We do like our fractions. Oh man, and I think Russell Wilson's on the other side, and so who knows with that? But that's a topic that we'll have in future discussions. Well, the Eagles are not in the Final Four, but they had a tie-in, and their fans burning up the hot stove circuit as we wait for these games. We will have a further look at that, what will then be the Super Bowl matchup the next time we come to you on Why Eagles Why. Remember to hit like and subscribe. For Pete Amato and Bill Gelman, this is Dave Bontempo saying thanks for joining us, everybody.